at lunch. So set the stage for the afternoon. Again, I'm Linda Smith, and I'm going to be moderating this session with the ending with a panel, Q&As for the audience. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking to you about the project that I described briefly earlier, and that is what we call the TELI, or the Tribal Early Learning Initiative, and what we were trying to do with that. And as I said, we were trying to bridge the programs and get more cooperation and more coordination alignment with programs that had all three of our programs: tribal home visiting, Head Start, and child care. So we went out and asked the tribes who had, or the groups that had the programs, to come in and apply for a very small amount of money. And trust me, it was very small. But it was, we thought, an incentive to go up for communities to come together and think about how they could align these programs and take on a challenge that they thought they had. And so one of the things that we've learned about this is that is a very important aspect of the TELI. And when I end this particular thing about what we're trying to do with legislation right now that will institutionalize the TELI within HHS and within our federal funding streams. So we went out, we asked, we got several applications. We're going to hear from Barb is here, and she was one of our TELI grantees. But we asked them to tell us what they wanted to do and give us a plan for how they would engage and what they would do, thinking again that these need to be community focused. And so we gave 4 grants, small grants to communities, one of them being White Earth here in Minnesota, the Cherokee in Choctaw in Oklahoma. I need to stop and read my own slide or my own notes because I tend to not like to read. And the Salish Kootenai, where I'm from, in San Felipe in New Mexico. And each of them took on different challenges. And it was very interesting to watch them work and what they did. And I was able to visit a couple of the programs as they were working through the process. And what we learned in the process is that we really didn't have as many barriers between the programs as we thought we did, between the regulations and the different requirements, but the perception was there about the barriers between the different funding streams. And we were able, and I'm going to look at Barb and chuckle about our discussion around the busing, because there was a perception that the Head Start buses could not pick up, for example, child care children and take them anywhere because those buses were only for Head Start. And there was a perception that there was some regulation somewhere that couldn't happen, and in fact there wasn't any. And we figured that out, and as soon as that came up in the conversation, we absolutely clarified that, and we were able to work through that. So what were perceptions got clarified rather quickly in the project, and we learned a tremendous amount. So one of the things that we learned, and we figured out in one case where we had shared professional development on the Salish Kootenai Reservation. And the reason that I bring that up is that in your packets is the Early Ed University paper on what we've done with Early Education University. And the University of Washington has developed a core curriculum for a bachelor's degree in early childhood. We have made that curriculum available to any university in the country because we don't have enough degrees in early childhood in early education. So we've made that available. A year ago, we announced that the Salish Kootenai College would be the first college to adopt the courses in a tribal community. And guess what? It is the best, and they got an award this year, for the most classes taught and the most classes used from the core curriculum. So they've taken the courses, they're using them now, and that is a joint effort as a result of the TELI project and the shared professional development that they needed on this on that reservation. So that was one of the things. We looked at in other ways at how we can invest in a shared data system, and I think Barb, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that in terms of what some of the things that we did there. A lot around professional development, shared data, sharing just across the board. So the TELI really took off, and we finished those grants about a year ago. Our secretary was very interested in the project, and we then found the money, increased the amount of money that we gave this last year. I think I can say it was a very paltry amount of $35,000 for the first time around. This last time was closer to $100,000 that we gave to grants for the TELI to do the same thing with a little more sophistication to it, so a little bit more structured to it so that we can provide more technical assistance to the grantees. In any case, it has gotten to the point now where we have, and Senator Tester from Montana, and it's been introduced also in the House, it has moved to the legislative agenda area where we have legislation authorizing us at HHS to institutionalize these types of demonstrations in tribal communities. So where we can break down more of these barriers, do more looking at how we could waive certain things that right now we can't waive. So Senator Tester has introduced the legislation, doubtful that it goes anywhere this year, although there continues to be interest in the legislation and in the movement. So I'm going to stop here in a minute, but one of the things I want to point out is it gets back to the points that I was trying to make earlier, where you need, and you need these certain factors, and we had really good examples of what we did. Were able to collect some information, present it to Congress, give them an idea, and it has translated into legislation. So it's how we begin to work on these things and move these things from concept into, in the case of the TELI, into a real effort to fund and to get our programs working together at the grassroots level. And I do want to say one final thing in terms of the TELI. In no case have we ever said to a community what they need to do. And it gets back to a philosophy that I didn't say earlier, but that I think is important to note, that our philosophy at HHS, and you see it in our new Head Start performance standards, we don't want to tell you and in the community how to do something. What we want to tell people is what we want you to, what's the goal? What's the outcome we're trying to achieve? You tell us how you're going to get there. So in the case of family-style dining, it will look different in tribal communities than it does elsewhere for obvious reasons, for cultural reasons, for tradition, etc. We don't want to tell you that you can't do that. All we want is for people to understand at the end of the day, we're trying to get socialization experiences into the mealtime process. So our whole philosophy, what you see in our new standards, our approach to the TELI, what we're trying to do with the legislation Senator Tester has brought in, is more of not how do you do it, but what do we want you to do at the end of the day. So the strategy, I think, is very, respectful, especially of our tribal communities, in letting our individual grantees figure out what they need to do and then moving on. So with that, I'm going to move on to our next speaker, who is a very near and dear friend of mine that I've known for a long time. And that is Barb Faber, and I don't think I need to introduce Barb to anyone. She's from right here in Minnesota, the White Earth Reservation, and she has been probably one of the strongest advocates for early childhood at the federal level for the Native American community. So Barb, why don't you take it away next?
Okay, bonjour. Can you hear me? Okay.
Clicker is there to advance your slides.
This.
And then you'll see it over down there on the right hand side.
Okay. As you know, I am Barb Faber, Program Director, the Child Care Development Block Grant Tribal Administrator for White Earth Nation. I've been in that position since the tribe received the Child Care Development Block Grant back in 1994. So we were the second tribe in Minnesota to receive that funding, the first tribe being Leech Lake, which is here. Before I jump into TELI, I just wanted to really briefly talk about building quality childcare in Indian country. And White Earth, we've been very fortunate. We were able to pull together stakeholders when we received the grant. And stakeholders meaning other early childhood programs, child care resource and referral, county social services, and Leech Lake helped us. So we were able to build a program that fit our community and fit our families' needs. So we created our own tribal licensing standards because even though the state had good licensing standards, we wanted it to fit our community. We developed child care assistance programs with that funding and also support to child care providers. So the goal was to put high quality childcare in every tribal community on our reservation, which is, and it's very rural, so we have 9 villages, and we've almost met that goal. But not only getting childcare into those communities, but building high quality childcare so that children have a safe place to go and a place where they are going to be nurtured and supported and ready for kindergarten. As you know, children in childcare are with their childcare teacher more waking hours than their parents. So early childcare is very, very important. I have to say I've been an advocate, like Linda said, for many years, just pushing that childcare is not babysitting. Childcare is early childhood. And we take that very seriously in our childcare world. Fast forward to 2016, we have 22 tribally licensed childcare providers on the reservation. 19 of those childcare sites are rated at a 3 to 4 star in the state's Parent Aware quality rating system that ranges from 1 to 4 stars. We have also 2 therapeutic childcare sites that we work with Indian Child Welfare on one site and substance abuse on the other site. So, and today we are our early childhood initiative through the West Central Foundation and have multiple community-based services that include partners with home health, which Sarah is here from the McPhee grant, and with our other many partners, including Indian Child Welfare and other, the Head Starts and right up to community health. And we provide positive things in the community. So, you know, there's enough negative things, so our goal is to put positive things in there for the family, quality family things. So we do things like the Family's Father's Festival, where we celebrate the male role model in the family. So we get about 650 people at our last event for that. And it shows how important that is. It just keeps growing and growing. Families want that, communities want that. We also have the Caring for Kids store, where children can come, or families can come and they earn points for going to the Well Child Check, our WIC appointments, our school conferences, early childhood conferences. And they can purchase things, anything from laundry soap to a stroller to a crib. But the basic things families, we can't keep on a shelf that families need are the laundry soap, the toilet paper, the diapers. So we also provide library services, literacy services, and a smart play spot. So, which leads me into our other huge, 2 partnerships. Our other one is, excuse me, the White Earth Nation Kindergarten Readiness Skills. White Earth Band of Ojibwe Nation, Resolution 034-14-005, passed 0-4 on a special meeting on July 28th, 2014 to support and recognize White Earth Pre-K leadership team as advocates for children from birth to grade 3, with its emphasis being on school readiness, incorporating the core standards and recognition of cultural identity, advocating for our future leaders of the White Earth Nation. So our partners in that, of course, are the schools, the BIA schools, the public schools, Head Start, charter school, thank you, education, and non-tribal Head Starts. So we developed a resource, White Earth Kindergarten Readiness Guide. The vision of this group is every child in White Earth has access to a continuity of services and a clear pathway of high-quality education from prenatal through grade 3. On Resolution 03815-001 was approved on December 28th, 2014. It authorizes the White Earth Nation Kindergarten Readiness Guide as the universal checklist to be used reservation-wide. So we've made some progress, and we know that we have to have that continuum from not only prenatal all the way up to grade 3. So, you know, there was some discussion earlier about retention and what, you know, keeping that momentum going up until grade 3. The other big event that happened to White Earth a few years ago was the Race to the Top, the Early Learning Scholarship Program. And that was a huge success. We have the data to prove that it was a success because it provides families with a choice to take their child to a high-quality early childhood setting that fits their needs. And so in all they can go shopping for a parent-aware rated early childhood program. That was very successful, and that started from the St. Paul project with Dr. Rolnick that he was able to help with. That ended. Now we have the Minnesota Early Learning Scholarships, and that was being administered by non-tribal programs. But in discussion with the state, we said, no, tribes want to administer those programs ourselves for our community. And the state agreed. And so last fall, they put out a RFP for tribes who want to administer those state scholarships in their community. And right now we have 3 of them. So hopefully the other 6 tribes will come forward and do that as well. My goal, and I just put a plug in this week with our tribal council, I said, you know, it would be great, the state is doing, the feds did it, the state's doing it, now I'd love to see a tribal early learning scholarship for our reservation. So then that brings us into the TELI. And okay. So the White Earth Tribal TELI Early Learning Initiative was a brainchild of Linda. And I hope you know, Linda, I'm starting a petition so that we can't let you retire. Can't let nobody fire you. Because on her clock, a lot of things have happened, and a lot of things that should have happened years ago. The McV grant was successful. The TELI grant, reauthorization of the Child Care Development Block Grant that sat unauthorized for 18 years, 19 years. And then the Head Start, the new performance standards. So thank you, Linda, for that. So TELI was to come together. It brought us 3 programs, the Child Care Early Childhood Program, our Head Start, Tribal Head Start, and our Tribal Home Health McV grant. So it was the first time we ever came together, and we developed a work plan with the assistance, technical assistance from the feds. Who is going to do what and when. We needed to understand each other's programs. What are our commonalities? What are our differences was as important. and the agreement. So Whitehurst Childcare, Early Childhood Program, and Whitehurst Tribal Head Start and McVie came together, and we talked about, well, let me back up, sorry. Our program wrote a grant, an administration, ANA grant, Administration for Native Americans. And with that grant, we wrote a grant for parent mentors. It was a very successful program, and that took home visitors into the community, much like the McVie grant and Early Head Start. So that was very successful, and when that grant ended, then the McVie grant knew that was so important, so they supported that and provided funding for more parent mentors for our program. So that was part of the TELI program. What this collaboration means, it's less duplication of services. Less duplication means less filling out, less assessments, duplication of assessments, screening, enrollment forms, financial forms. So it really, really helped the family so that they aren't filling out all this paperwork, because they get kind of that glazed over look. So getting our 3 programs, it was the directors we started, and we were able to talk about, what we talk about, and but then we had to pull our staff together. And so we did a survey to our staff and our TELI staff, and just asked them kind of what they thought of this. And we wanted to set up monthly meetings, and so we got their input on what they wanted out of that monthly meeting. And so, and I'm not going to read each one of these, but so that they appreciated it. We had an all-staff in-service that was kind of the kickoff, and then we went to the monthly meetings, and the program directors also attended those monthly meetings. And so they were very appreciative. They wanted someone to meet weekly, not monthly, but so that was a positive. TELI staff also told us about their concerns, and that's what you see on the left. So they weren't as familiar with our programs, or each other, the child care program or the McVie or Head Start. So they wanted to find out about each other. And they wanted to find out about each other's forms and service areas, and so those monthly meetings helped with that. We asked our TELI staff what supports of training would they like to have, and so you have a list of the co-training that they all wanted to have. And going back to the commonalities, well, the training is across the board. And this is shared professional development. And with that, they also were able to do co-home visiting. So it wasn't just one TELI person going in there. A lot of the times it was 2 of them going in there. And, supporting staff, because they're the ones that are out in the trenches. They are working with our staff, our families. And so it's important to support our staff who are working with the families, just like we do in a classroom. We want our teachers to be the best of the quality. Well, we want our home visitors to be the best quality and get that support. So, and I'm cruising right along. I know I only have a few minutes. So, what also helped our TELI process was the Whitehurst WECARE system. And that came out of home health. They initiated it and brought it out to the rest of the programs. And so we decided that in order to serve our families better, we couldn't expect our families, if they needed to go to have several as a family, have several needs from financial to transportation to employment and training to social services. So that's, imagine in a rural community, a family having to go to all these different programs on a very limited budget, very limited time. So this WECARE, most of our programs embraced it because it's a comprehensive case management system within our own tribal government, which means, translates to, a family coming to any one of our programs and the programs coming around that family instead of the family coming to 10 different programs. So the concept was serving the whole family instead of the family going to all the different doors. So it's not without hiccups. We're still working out the wrinkles, but in theory, it is amazing because we're able to provide multiple services to that family. We were chosen as through the White House Rural Council recently because of, we believe, of the WECARE model as a rural impact community, one of 10 across the nation. And with that, we are now bringing in a school district because that was a partner that wasn't sitting at the table, and as well as the Indian Health Service. So we're in the process of bringing those partners to the table as well. The resolution is sitting with the Tribal Council right now to mandate WECARE case model across the reservation, mandating all tribal programs to use the WECARE case management system. In Indian country, we aren't so good about collecting our own data and using that data to help drive policy within our own tribe or to drive services. So along with the WECARE, the Home Health initiated a partnership with Right Track, which is the software company is Handle, but there are a lot of other, excuse me, a lot of other software companies out there. So the data system takes the data from all the WECARE partners and puts it into a system. And so that system, then it gathers the data. We don't have to wait till the census comes out to give us, really late data. But that data is that we can use. It's our data. We can use the data to analyze it, use the data to see trends, what our population is, and use that data to drive policies and change systems. So it's fine and well to have a case management system, but you need the data, and we talked a little bit about the data earlier. So the benefits, of course, again, are that we're less duplication out there for families. The first cohort did get about 35,000. Second cohort got 100,000. Yeah, I bent her ear a little bit about that at one time. But what we said is that we didn't need $100,000 to do TELI. We did it with 35,000, so yay. Money's nice, but it shouldn't be really in Indian country with less resources and less resources. We shouldn't always just look at the money and say, we don't have the money to do it. I don't buy that. As long as we've got programs there and collaborative partners, we've got everything we need to serve our families. So with that, I think that's all I have. So thank you.
There's one thing that I think I want to add about what I said about Barb before we move on. She did say that we managed to get the Child Care and Development Block Grant reauthorized after 18 years. What she didn't say that she was instrumental in a major change in that block grant for tribal communities, and that was we got the cap lifted on the amount of money that we give to tribal child care programs. So we were able, there was a hold harmless for the other grantees clause in there, but over the last 2 years at ACF, we've been able to increase the amount of money going to tribes for child care. First to 2, and it was capped at 2%. Now it's at 2.5%. It's gone to 2.75%, which may not sound like a lot of money, but it's about a $30-some million increase in the amount of money going to tribal child care, and that was really a lot because Barb's work on that issue. So thanks to her. The next speaker I want to introduce is another friend of ours at ACF, I would say too, and that's Terry Cross. And Terry, as many of you know, he introduced himself earlier at lunch, but he was the executive director and founder of NICWA, and he has worked tirelessly on behalf of children in our welfare and our foster care system. He also is the author of the only evidence-based parenting program for the tribal community, and that is the Positive Indian Parenting. When we did our review of parenting programs that had some evidence that they worked, that we put into a toolkit that we put out a couple of years ago, this program was the only one that met the criteria. So he's got over 40 years of experience in child welfare, and he is a friend to all of us, both at the national as well as the community level. So Terry?
Thank you, Linda. Good to see you. Well, I'm very pleased to be here for several reasons, some of which you're going to hear in a few minutes. I want to tell you just a little bit about the history of the National Indian Child Welfare Association and kind of how we came to develop the Positive Indian Parenting Curriculum, published in 1987, so it's been around for a while. NICWA grew out of the initial project was called the Northwest Indian Child Welfare Institute. We were a response to the need that tribal communities had after the passage of the Indian Child Welfare Act. Our organization really specializes in the capacity to deliver child welfare services at the tribal level. While we do advocacy around the law, primarily our role is with regard to tribal capacity. And we define child welfare very broadly. We think of child welfare as all of the antecedents and all of the consequences of child maltreatment. So we've been involved with prevention, we've been involved with working with substance abusing families, children's mental health. So we do a wide range of things. Our organization has 4 major areas of interest. First is workforce development, so it's conferences and training institutes and curricula and worker certification program. The second is community development. So we're working with about 20 tribes at any one time, hands-on in community, working on capacity building projects. We have a government affairs and policy division. We started that work, and NICWA was founded in 1983. We really got into the government affairs work in 1989 is when we hired our first staff. We were all volunteer before that. But one of the reasons I'm so pleased to be here is that NICWA was the organization that got tribes access to the child care and development block grants so many years ago. One of our specialties has been to watch legislation and to see how we could work into that legislation language that would open that funding stream to tribes. The McVie home visiting, we also had a strong hand in getting access to tribes under that legislation, along with many, many others. But to be here and see the fruits of that kind of labor of, the work of our organization, it means so much in Indian country to have access to these kinds of programs to prevent the child maltreatment that we deal with in the child welfare system. And it's our belief that it's not enough to be that used that model that's so prevalent in the mainstream of rescue and police. We really need to stop the trauma, and we need to heal our communities. Every family is important, every child's important, every relationship is important in a relationship-based society. So when we started, one of the first things we did was to develop what's called the Heritage in Helping Curriculum, and it's a tribal child welfare curriculum, basically how to do child welfare in a tribal community. One of the lessons, one of the modules, it's an 11-book set, it has a little chapter on parenting. And our advisory committee and the trainers that we trained initially said, boy, do we need more than that. And so in 1985, we started a process of developing positive Indian parenting. Early in my career, I had been trained as a parent effectiveness trainer, so I had notions that I would adapt parent effectiveness training. But the more I met with our elders and advisors, they said, well, you could do that. You know, our elders are polite. You could do that, but you won't reach our families. And so as we began to talk about what does this really mean to develop a curriculum that really reaches our tribal families. So I traveled around talking to elders. Anita Chisholm, who was then at the American Indian Institute in Oklahoma, conducted 2 international conferences on Indian parenting. People from Canada came down from all over the United States. This would have been 85 and 86, I think. Guy by the name of Ed Edmo, who some of you may know. He's a poet, playwright, elder, storyteller in the Portland area. Ed was working for me as a work-study student at the time. Ed was doing work at the women's penitentiary in Salem. He said, hey, there's a group of Indian women at the pen they'd be good to talk to about Indian parenting. So here's 2 young Indian guys. We go down to the penitentiary. We go into this room with about 20 Native women, and they're just staring at us because we're asking to talk to them about Indian parenting. And stone silence for probably 10 minutes, it maybe seemed longer than that. And finally one of them said, what are you asking us for? We're the ones they take the kids away from. And our response was, who better to ask? What would you need to know in order to have your children with you? We spent over 2 hours in that room with tears and stories and questions, and we came out of there knowing what some of the basic framework of the curriculum would be. Putting that together with what our elders were telling us and having moms tell us what they missed was central. So our curriculum, we train trainers. We want to be, it's values-based, it's culturally specific. However, we knew we couldn't write a curriculum for all of Indian country. What we could do was develop a template that could be adapted for every community using their own values, their own teachings, their own support processes. And we could give materials on how to deliver such a training. So our approach is training of trainers. We want people to get the content. We want them to explore what their own traditions are in their own communities, and there are several versions around the country. You won't always see it with the label Positive Indian Parenting. At Pasquayaki, I think it's called Precious Hearts. There's a version here in Minnesota it's Minnesota Indian Parenting or Positive Ojibwe parenting. There's a couple different versions. So you won't always see it with that PIP label on it. We encourage that. It's so important to have people adapt it locally. We want people who go through our training of trainers to be effective in working with parents. We want them to have the tools to work with and to be, and we can support them as trainers ourselves. This is when we first started doing this. What we heard from around the country was that Indian parents don't go to parent training. Well, when we started supporting our trainings, our trainers, we would get calls, and the question was, how do we get people to go home? And it has to do with the conversation that Maria and that conversation about historic trauma. Josie and Maria are right on. You have to deal with that feeling of trauma. Now, I know that part of what brought me to this was my own experience. I'm a member of the Seneca Nation of Indians. And I didn't learn to read until I was in the 4th grade because in my school, Indian kids don't learn, and so I wasn't taught. My mother was beaten for speaking her language when she went to school. Now, if you don't, that transmission process, I knew when my mother came to school in 1st grade something was wrong. Her blood pressure was up, her breathing was shallow. I knew this wasn't a safe place, so I learned, and whether it's genetic memory or just being clued in to how your mom feels when she walks into the school because it's not safe. These are the kinds of things we have to figure out how to turn around. I did my own personal cultural discovery was in graduate school. I was able to go to graduate school because of funding that was created by the, and Josie said it earlier, the flooding of our reservation. My family's land was wiped out by the Kinzu Dam. And to be able to go to school, and I was sitting in the basement of the Portland State Library reading articles on native lifeways, cultural practices, and it was that empowering moment that Maria and Josie talked about earlier. I said, I'm not stupid, I'm not backward, I'm not sullen, I'm not any of those labels that got put on me, I'm Seneca. And I got really mad. And I got, so I wanted it all and I wanted it yesterday. And so I went home to my reservation to learn, fell flat on my face with the things they'd taught me in graduate school. Thankfully, elders took me under their wing and taught me. I spent time with people that were fantastic teachers that taught me to reject the colonial lie. As Native people, we know what white people think of us. We're not quite human. And so the messages are everywhere around us. There's a study that I heard about a few months ago that said most Americans are exposed to 5 racial slurs about Native Americans every day. They don't see it because it's so built in to our culture. I'm saying that because as we began the process of developing this curriculum, we knew this curriculum had to deal with that issue of historic trauma. That we had to reach into something very different than what was available in the mainstream, because almost all of the parenting curricula were deficit-based. There's something wrong with you, you don't have enough of this or enough of that, and we're going to fix you by giving you information. What our elders told us was that there's nothing wrong with us as people. But we are people who have had a horrible history. And so this impact of historic trauma in this circle plays out in our families and in our parenting. We heard about it earlier. One of the things as we built this curriculum, we knew that we had to start out with helping people believe in themselves, believing in their own culture. Sometimes people, when you talk about historic trauma, people ask me the question, well, when are you going to get over it? My response to that question is, when are you going to stop it? We'll get over it when it stops, because it's still going on. And I'm fortunate to be part of a movement at the moment with Kellogg Foundation, something called the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Enterprise. Its goal is to reject the false hierarchy of human value based on race. I believe that until we reject that false hierarchy, reject the colonial lie, we will continue to have the kinds of difficulties in our community that we have because we simply are too well schooled as tribal people to believe that we're less than others. We're overcoming that. You heard it at lunch. I was really moved by our lunch. Our elders said that this curriculum has to be aimed at people's hearts. Doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, you can't do what you don't feel. And so, as we developed this, it was all about helping people reclaim who they are as tribal people. The first lesson of the curriculum is called Traditional Parenting. It really just looks at where did you learn to parent. This is where we look at boarding school, we look at foster care, at transracial adoption, at the issues of substance misuse in families. So this is our chapter on historic trauma, though we don't label it that way. The basic message of Lesson 1 is you have a birthright to be a positive parent. This was handed down generation after generation, and it was deprived of our people this birthright to be a healthy and whole family. And so being part of this positive Indian parenting is your opportunity to reclaim your birthright as an Indian parent. We find that people really resonate with that because it's not the deficit model. It's not saying something's wrong with you that we got to fix. It's something you have a right to claim. I'll just go into one of the lessons here in a second. So first lesson is lesson of the storyteller. We use traditional storytelling to talk about values, to talk about parenting, but also to talk about communication and about how parents' job is to shape the values of their child and how communication shapes the relationship and how important the relationship is. The next lesson is a lesson of the cradle board, and that's a jumping off place for what were the practices around nurturing, around attachment, around helping children understand that they belong in this world. Really tapping into the traditional spiritual beliefs about children that they are gifts of the Creator, and should they be mistreated, the Creator will take them back. The children are spiritual beings, that they come into this physical world with innate wisdom from their time with the Creator, and it's only by coming into this world that they get out of balance. That little spirit comes here, and they know how beautiful it is to be with the Creator, and if we don't treat them just as well, they'll want to go back there. So we have to sing to them. We have to hold them. We have to talk to them. We have to make them feel welcome in this world. And we learned all of the different practices that go into helping a spirit feel good in this world. And we did the same around using our traditional teachings around harmony and around traditional behavior management and what were the limits of behavior management. We learned about the lessons that people teach around Mother Nature. At the time, there was this really wonderful little publication out of Oklahoma. It was a great role model for us, and the title was How to Grow Successful Ponkas. The Ponca tribe had put that out, and just a really wonderful little book using their tribal teachings around child rearing. And then using praise and understanding the importance of nonverbals, and then finally wrapping up with choices in parenting. Given this information, what kind of parent do you want to be? Setting goals, developing support networks, being with one another. This is my grandson. Grandpas get to have the prerogative to include their grandkids in slide decks. So in this Lessons of the Cradle board, where we look at kinds of things, not only, and again, the intent is not everybody learn how to use a cradle board. If that was a tradition in your tribe, fine. If it wasn't, what are the traditions in your tribe? And so whether it's infant massage or shawl carrying or games, and what does that have to do? How are those examples of nurturing? And then the lesson introduces child development and understands child development from traditional perspectives, traditions around what pregnant moms are supposed to do and not do in terms of some of their spiritual practices, customs around naming and rites of passage, giving kids room to learn, how kids were encouraged to learning. This is interesting how traditionally families passed on information. I cannot remember a time when I did not know how to pick mushrooms. Now in my territory, we have a couple of kinds of mushrooms. One is deadly poison and the other is really tasty. Before noon, you can tell them apart. After noon, you can't tell them apart. In the morning, the edible ones are pink underneath, and the ones that are poison are white underneath. And then after about noon, they all turn brown underneath. And I would go out with an 8-quart basket at 5 years old, bring back a basket of mushrooms because I lived out in the country and home was always within sight. But I don't remember a time when I didn't know how to do that. And there's other things like that. So there was a lot of trust, what I'm saying is we learned, if your culture values interdependence, your child rearing practices are going to include things that teach interdependence, which means you learn to be of service to your family. The expression, we tell our little ones, go get grandma a glass of water. That just doesn't mean, get grandma a glass of water. That means you're an important part of this family. We're interdependent. You have a role here. So this notion of readiness, we also found in our culture that teachings around when children were ready to do different things. This is work that we've done more recently because we're trying to actually expand an evidence base, and the evidence for our curriculum is in its 30 years of implementation. But we have recently been doing work around the values that we're teaching in the curriculum. And so what you see here is many tribes have a value on harmony and balance. So what are the child rearing practices that if you're going to be a parent who's trying to instill values of harmony and balance in your family, what kinds of practices are you going to incorporate? So there's a number of things here like cradle boards and baby baskets, back and shawl carrying, hammocks, side-to-side movement, placing children on natural fur and fleece. We've tried to identify what are the developmental tasks that are going on those practices would be responsive to, and then what's going on brain chemistry, brain development-wise, because what we're trying to demonstrate here is that these traditions are not just good ideas. You can track them, that traditional wisdom that was referenced earlier, these things that our ancestors knew how to do were based on inherent wisdom on what children need and what the brain needs to develop. We're simply documenting what we think is going on with regard to healthy brain development when we use these traditional practices, because we want to legitimize these practices. I think it's fine to teach people how to do things, but not at the expense of losing those things that make us who we are. So I'm not interested in having an outside curriculum come in to our tribal communities and teach us at the expense of our own way of understanding and our own way of knowing. Back in 1987, when we were getting ready to publish, I always take a curriculum out to test. Took it to White Mountain, Alaska, where 4-day training of trainers I always watch what the elders are doing. And this little old lady, little tiny, sat there for a couple days, didn't say anything. Third day, she clears her throat, pushes her chair back, stands up, and I thought, oh gosh, we're going to hear it now. And she said, you know, for too long we've been told our ways are bad. Those days are over. And she sat down. She just gave everybody permission to learn and permission to reclaim that birthright of being a positive Indian parent. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more speaker before we open it up and take questions and answers. And our final speaker is Amy Lapointe, and she is the co-director of the EduCare Winnebago program, which I had the opportunity to go to the grand opening of, and it's a beautiful, brand new, wonderful facility on the Winnebago Reservation, northeast Nebraska. And I would love to come back, Amy, and see it now after you've had a chance to really get children in and involved. But Amy has been, she's, as I said, the co-director of this particular program, but she's been a Head Start director for 12 years and is a member of the Winnebago tribe and has been working in early childhood for a long, long time. You graduate of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. And this is one of the more exciting projects that we really have as a laboratory for really what we need to be doing with our children. So, Amy.
Your slides are down there. You can look right over it.
Well, good afternoon. Before I start, I'd like to ask my elders to excuse me for getting up here and talking. But I'm very thankful to be asked to come and talk about our program. EduCare Winnebago, if you're not familiar with EduCare, they do have a website. It's EduCare Learning Network. We are the first Native American tribe to belong to the EduCare Learning Network. And so where we begin, just to give you a little history of Winnebago, we are in the northeast corner of Nebraska. We're 19 miles from Sioux City, Iowa, about 21 miles from the border of South Dakota. And we have 3 schools. There's the Winnebago Public School, they're K through 12. There's a Catholic mission school, K through 8, and then we also have a Lutheran school, which was primarily preschool until about maybe 5 years ago. They opened a K through 4 school. So in the beginning, which was probably about 7 years ago, we didn't have a relationship. There was no relationship between any of our programs. The school blamed us a lot for meeting Head Start, blamed us a lot for the kids coming into school behind in their education. So there was another factor, which was a lot of kids coming to us into Head Start that were significantly delayed in their development, and the school provided some special education staff to us. I think it was like twice a week for a couple hours in the afternoon. And but when we would doing our incoming assessment, when we assessed our kids and we knew that something, needed to be done, it was taking probably at least the 2 years that they were within our program to even receive services, or they were going into kindergarten and then trying to provide them services. So around 2009, I'm not real specific on the date, but I received a phone call from the father at the St. Augustine school who had one of their board members, who was a pediatrician in Omaha, had brought the idea to him about building a facility in Winnebago that would close that achievement gap so the kids would be ready to go be on task when they got to kindergarten. After this phone call, I remember, he talking, and, I was like, it really sounds like a good idea, but it's never going to happen. And so soon after our special, we, kind of start working with the state and getting the state people to come in to address our special education needs, because we really wanted our kids to start getting services sooner so that when they got to kindergarten, they weren't so behind. We started having meetings with our program, the public school superintendent started coming, St. Augustine's, and we started building that relationship. And so there wasn't, that kind of, whatever you want to call it, between us. Soon, a representative from the Buffett Early Childhood Fund came, and some EduCare Omaha people came to our meetings. And, during this time we were discussing, changes, what could take place in Winnebago that would help to close that gap. And then we had meetings and meetings and meetings, and then finally it came to a point where it was like, okay, we can't go any further. I'm a tribal employee. It's really going to be up to our tribal council if this is going to become a reality or not. And so we went and we scheduled a meeting with our tribal council. We asked them about this, idea, and we were very fortunate that they saw the good things that could happen from this. So they bought into it, but that step was a big step, because building the facility is not cheap. While this was going on, these discussions were going on, EduCare Omaha, they have 2 facilities. They opened their doors to us. They provided us, welcomed us into their building anytime. They gave us tours. They let us view, their classrooms. Met with their master teachers, their family support, their files, how they've set up files. And I always remember going through this change, and it's just like I felt like, God, why can't we come up with these ideas? I feel like we're 50 years behind where we should be when I was getting all, this help from them. But the tribe And Buffett Early Childhood decided that this building was going to become a success. They covered half the cost, Buffett did, and then Winnebago Tribe covered the other half, not meaning that they had the $5.1 million there. They raised money themselves too. And so that year, which I believe was probably about 2012, was called Year of the Child. So it really helped our tribal council focus on improving early childhood services in our community. And like you heard a lot today, is that the first 5 years is very important for early childhood education. So we became a reality, and we opened our doors in March of 2014 when our building still wasn't even ready. But we wanted to open the doors. I don't even think we were fully ready when we had the grand opening. But another thing, like and some pictures I've included in here, but where we were located was old boarding school buildings on a St. Augustine's campus that were built in 1950s. So then there was a lot, of renovations we had to do every year. And then childcare was located in a double wide trailer on the other side of town. So when Head Start got over, we had to bus the kids down to daycare. So when we opened our doors, we were all together. And all the kids 0 to 5 came to one location. So you can see in the pictures, these were our old boarding school buildings. Our administration building was in a double wide trailer too. I don't have a picture of the child care center because they tore it down. So, but this is our new facility. We have 16 classrooms. There's 7 Head Start preschool age classrooms. There's 9 early Head Start child care partnership classrooms. And so building quality in our program, we became a part of the EduCare Learning Network. And so in that EduCare model, there's 4 core features: data utilization, embedded professional development, high quality teaching practices, and intensive family engagement. By this time, we had a really good relationship with our public school, and pretty much, anything the superintendent, we asked him of, he gave it to us. So we have a high need of special education in our program. It's probably about 30 kids out of our 90, so about a third of our kids in preschool require, and most of it is speech and language. So he gave us 4 special education staff. There was 2 special education teachers and 2 speech and language pathologists that were housed in our center. They are housed in our center. And then just last year, he gave us a part-time child psychologist, 20 hours a week, because we deal with a lot of behaviors and such. So having that was really beneficial for us. So the LEA, which is our local evaluators, which is another thing that is something positive for our program, that we have the University of UNMC, University of Nebraska Medical Center, come in and do some assessments, which is another slide coming up. But they administer our assessments. Then the Winnebago Public School also received 2 grants, and one was for birth to 3 classrooms, 2 of those, so they get a 6 pence, and then also preschool age. So right now, instead of just being able to service our 90 Head Start children, we're able to service 119 preschool age because of the preschool grant. The data. So this is University of Medical Center comes in. They do the PPVT, which measures students' receptive vocabulary. The PLS measures the receptive and expressive language. The DECA, which is a social emotional behavioral tool. And the Bracken is a kindergarten readiness assessment done. They also come in, they do class observations twice a year, and Eckers and ITERs on all of our classrooms to measure the teacher-student interactions. This is just one of our assessments. So as part of Head Start, you're required to do an incoming, outgoing assessment. We use the Brigance. So you can see if they're at age 5, that means they're ready to go into kindergarten. So you could see where they were when they came into the program at, 3 or whatever, and then when they left the program at kindergarten age. So most of them were right on task where they needed to be. And these is just the last 2 years. We've been open, we've operated 2 full school years so far. So one results from the first year and then the other results from last year. Embedded professional development. We do have ongoing trainings that we offer for our staff. We are, dealing with the same thing that probably a lot of programs deal with, and that was qualified teachers. We get the input from the teachers on what trainings they want. They all do a professional development plan, and we tried to offer trainings according to what they need. We have a local community college, the Little Priest Tribal College, and they come to our center and do early childhood classes with our staff that are enrolled in their school. So it's really convenient for our staff to be able to take classes towards their AA degree in early childhood. High quality teaching practices. For EduCare, I know Head Start is a 2, but for EduCare requirements, the staff ratio is 3 to 17 in a preschool age and 3 to 8 in the early Head Start. And bachelor level teacher for each classroom, AA teacher, and a training teacher. Currently, we have till January, but I don't think we're going to meet that. But we have 6 of the 16 with bachelor levels. Every classroom has at least an AA teacher, though. We also have a language grant that implements the Ho-Chunk language into every classroom. They work with our kids every day. Intensive family engagement. So family being, getting the families involved is another hard thing for us. We have 4 family support people, and they have 4 classrooms within the building. So they work with the parents in there. They do a needs assessment, and they focus on creating some goals with the families. We also have family fun activities planned every month, so that gets the parents involved with their kids. We just did our first one, which was, we did a kickball kickoff, and it was really cute to have, like the babies. We even included a baby on a team, so they had to have a partner with them, and they ran to the bases with the holding the baby. So it was really cute, but and we get a lot of parents to participate when we plan these activities. We gave out shirts to every, the team. They signed up for their team. They had different color shirts. Babies even had the shirt on, so it was really cute. We've done like a breakfast where, they come, like, we're probably gonna do that again in October, since it's October, but they came in and they decorated a bagel with their parents, and they read the, the Green Monster book. So it's really fun to see that and see the parents interacting with their kids. Quarterly classroom meetings with families, teachers, and family support to go over, what's going on in the classrooms. There also is a monthly child review, and that includes the lead teacher, a family support, the school psychologist, and ed coordinator. And they go over the whole child. If there's any issues going on that's preventing the child from learning, they try to address it and come up with solutions. How to help that child. And then they also, we have a really good transition plan with our public school in St. Augustine's. The ELI grant, we have language teachers that go in a classroom every day. There's a contest that they do to get families involved where they learn phrases or words. They test the kids. Just kind of like a little competition, so a lot of them get into it. One of our barriers in this is that we have very little fluent speakers, so our staff that are teaching are learning right along. We do have a language program in the community, but they kind of pulled back and are focusing on getting their staff to be, to speak the language first before they come and start teaching. So we're kind of out on our own on this for right now. Mental health, what I said, we have, part-time psychologist. She reviews all the classrooms. She goes through the mental health questionnaires, and she evaluates those children that are of concern. So she knows right. She's the one who scores them. She knows right away who she needs to go and look at if there's an issue or whatever. We have a behavioral health center too in Winnebago, and they come in and they do some preventative activities with our kiddos. And then if there's severe behaviors that require some kind of therapy or whatever, they take the referrals. This year is our first year that we got a social emotional grant, and so we're in the very early stages. In August we did a good training with all the staff on behaviors. And then there's a team that was developed, and the team is going to meet, I believe, every month, and to talk about behaviors. And so a lot of training is going to take place for this grant this year on social, emotional, and executive functioning skills. Am I done? Okay, sorry. And just last slide, advocating for early childhood. You need to get support from your tribal council. Build relationships with your school and share the data to show that your kids are really improving. And then last, here's some just pictures of our center. So you could see what our classrooms look like. We have a really state-of-the-art training room. We have really nice natural outdoor play space. Not a lot of play. We have one play structure. A lot of it is natural. We have some planters, so there's natural plants, and then they're building an outdoor classroom with the Chapotake, and that's where our language program's doing their. And then this is just, we designed the building, and it's, we got to incorporate a lot of our culture into the building. So thank you.
Okay, so now we want to turn it over to you to ask questions of the panel. We have some things that we could continue to talk about. We wanted to give you an opportunity to ask about any of the initiatives that you've seen here. So do we have questions from the audience?
I think everybody's sleeping. I've had a good meal.
Yeah. Well, if not, then I want to ask a couple of questions of the panel. And the first one is, and I think it's really important, we've talked about it all day long. What are some of the strategies that you all use to get your parents engaged?
I'll jump. I think a lot of the things that go on the activities that go on our reservation is because of the partnerships we have with a lot of programs on there. I know that that's why we're successful in getting parent engagement, because every time there's a community event, of course, all the different programs are talking to their families and getting them involved. The Caring for Kids store is a good example of that, and all of the partners that supply the Caring for Kids store give points out to their parents to, again, do the well child checks, our parent conferences, and then they come in and purchase the items they need. But I think it's, and I believe I seen it on a slide this morning, is when you do invite your parents, you've got to respect their time and provide them with, whether you want to call it a door prize, an incentive, whatever it is. But whether that's a gas voucher, you feed them, you provide, childcare or child activities in another room. I think it's just being respectful of them and their time, and asking them what it'll take to get them in the door.
Tara?
Well, one of the strategies that we've seen that we're is having focus groups of parents and basically bringing them together and asking them what they think. Rather than being the expert who's going to share with them, you'll bring them and ask them to talk to you. Well, we heard a lot at lunch about the school where the opening, the welcoming, the conversation. It's relationship. Simply using people's names, greeting people in warm kinds of ways, making sure that they're open, that the space is open to them, that they're welcome and valued as human beings. We work with the System of Care project at St. Gleska University. They don't use the word client, or they use relatives. These are our relatives, and it's from their Lakota teachings. And so I think it's some about how we refer to them, whether we, the paradigm in the mainstream is a relationship between a professional and a community member. That has to shift to being human to human. Your roles may be different, but it's what you do with your relationships that's important.
Amy, do you have anything?
I guess for us, we just try to make things, come up with ideas that would be fun for the families to interact with each other. And we also, always provide food and some kind of incentive, so.
One of the things that we were talking about at lunch is the whole aspect of intergenerational work and extended family and how important it is. And how do you engage and support the extended family? I know in some of what I've been seeing lately is a lot of grandparents raising children, and Terry, you showed your grandchild, which I think we have to be respectful of that. And how do we engage the extended family, the grandparents, and the other members of the family?
I recently did an evaluation of early childhood program at the Native American Youth and Family Center, and they had a partnership between the local Head Start program and NEA, and one of the major hurdles they had to get across was having the Head Start program figure out how to engage extended family. They did a good job because on graduation, Head Start graduation, they had like 100 family members show up, and they didn't have room for them all.
Oh, that's great. Barb, anything?
Well, with us, the early learning scholarships really helped those grandparents, because of the opioid epidemic in Indian country and across the country. We do have a lot of grandparents, great grandparents raising grandchildren, and they need extra support. And so the early learning scholarships were able to provide us, provide the grandparents a place to take their child, because there's no work requirement. So we're helping, it was a dual thing, because a benefit, because the child was able to go to a high quality early childhood setting, and the grandparent got to have a break. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not in my 80s, and those little ones wear me out. Can you imagine having, and we have great grandparents raising their children on our program, and they're in their 80s raising toddlers, and so that's very helpful. We also have relatives as parents support group, and that brings in grandparents who are raising their grandchildren just to come in once a month. We provide a meal, some door prizes, and a speaker once in a while, maybe a social worker or a lawyer, to tell them about their rights. And then just quickly through the ANA grant that we did have with the parent mentors, we wrote in the grant to hire elders to help guide the program. And we also respected their time and provided them with a stipend.
Well, I'm going to ask one final question of you all and give you free access here to, what are the barriers and problems that you've seen in really implementing high-quality early childhood programs? What strikes you as needs to get fixed?
Professional development, funding for professional development. In childcare, it seems like once we have staff who obtain their early childhood degree, because of the low wages, then we lose them to Head Start. And then maybe they get their bachelor's in Head Start, and then we lose them to the school districts. So then we have to start all over. And there's just not enough. We have a hard time filling positions in our childcare centers. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things.
So it's kind of a combination of professional development and pay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amy, what about you?
I think just from my perspective as being a Head Start director and collaborating now with childcare is that building the childcare up to where Head Start is.
And what has been challenging about that? What's the biggest barrier?
I think for the staff to buy into it and to know that what they're doing is improving the outcomes for our kids.
Linda, I think you said it earlier, it's resources. There's a lot more need than there are resources to go around. And so those things, that issue is related to the workforce development issues, related to the access issue. So I think more access to resources.
And and I think that loops back to what we were talking about earlier, and Barb, you said, everyone here has said it, I think having the data and demonstrating the need is a big piece of what we really need to be thinking through here, and how do we do that in better ways. Barb?
And, in our community, like I said earlier, we have 22 licensed childcare sites, and two of them are centers, 2 of them are therapeutic childcare. And we just had a staff training in service on Monday, and it's empowering our childcare providers and teachers that they are teachers. They are teachers. And aside from the professional development, in rural Minnesota and rural Indian country, the resources are very tight. And when you're 30 miles from, or even an hour from a tribal college, it's really, really hard. So we have on-staff trainers that go to the providers they work in the evenings, on weekends with our childcare, because childcare is year-round. It's Monday through Friday. It's usually 7:30 to 5 o'clock, and so there's no days off for in-service. And so we have to provide that training and professional development to them on their schedule.
We have a question.
Yes, I was wondering, have you tried to do anything with incorporating parents, siblings, other family members in supportive action roles in your program, where they may begin to develop some skills and also maybe get interested in more formal training, but having them be active, not, I know you're trying to, you get them to bring their kids in, but are you able to do much beyond that with, or maybe you haven't tried, I don't know. But I'm just wondering, where are the parents and the grandparents? There was some mention of grandparents. Where are the parents and the siblings, who usually are pretty important to the caretaking process in Indian homes?
Anyone on that one? One thing I could say about that is that the history actually of Head Start was to hire parents and train them, and have moved a whole cadre of people through the system to basically BA degrees now. And that's what we're trying to do with our other programs, is hire people and get them on that pathway. Not in the partnerships that we're doing, they're not required to have it when we hire them, but they do have to meet certain milestones within a time period.
I wasn't thinking so much of hiring. I mean, that might be an all family members have to somehow or other feel like they have some ownership in this process. I know that's a challenge. I'm not, I'm not thinking this is going to be simple, because there are problems out there. I understand that. But I just wonder if it's something that, where you have thought about some kind of, you said you started that in Head Start, it just didn't work, or,
No, it worked, actually.
okay, but you're not using it anymore.
No, well, we've trained most of them up to at least a bachelor's, or I mean an AA, most of them.
But
to a
they're
bachelor's.
saying they're short of staff. Okay.
Well, a little bit is really hard and indicative of any country when you can go to the casino and get a job for $10, but you go into childcare and you're getting paid $5.50, $6.50, $7.50. So the whole thing is you're looking at that gap of where you're going to be able to maximize your income. And where you're going to be able to maximize the resources. So if you're looking at a family to take up that role, or a family member to take up that role, it's not necessarily for them. And for me, I mean, I have 2 sons, and I don't want any more little kids around me. You know, I'm just not that type of person that can go into family care. I know that some are, but we don't value them the same way that we do anywhere else, when we can go and drop our kid off at a daycare center for, what, $2 to $4 an hour. So therefore, they're not making the money that they can, and they have to maximize their dollars based on numbers.
You know, we just issued a report about 2 months ago on this very issue of the wages in the workforce, and in terms of childcare in every state, and I think this holds true for tribal communities, in every state in this country, based on a child care worker's wages, they qualify for food stamps.
Yeah.
So it gets to the gap issue that I was talking about this morning, and why we need to get that funding, per child funding level up, and how are we going to make that up. And we're trying, it's a long process. It just is one where we have to convince the public that we need to invest in these kids. And I think most everyone now understands that our workforce is underpaid. I think that's out there. We understand the neuroscience now and the need for all of this, what you've seen today. I think what we now need is to really start moving in this direction of getting the funding to support it. It's not easy.
Can I just respond to that, lady? You know, in childcare, we're doing the parent conferences, which are talking to parents. You know, usually in childcare, they're rushing in to drop off the child, so they're not late for work, and they're rushing to get the child to go home and cook supper and do all that. So it's important that we are doing parent conferences with them, and I know Head Start does those, and it's preschool. So that's one way we communicate and get input and show progress or concerns for the children. The other thing is our youth workers. In our centers, we have summer youth workers that have been with us, and most of them are going now into the early childhood field because they got a taste of it and they liked it. So we're really proud of that. As Terry said, relationships. One of the things I recently seen was the Parent Leadership Training Institute, and I'm trying to bring that to our communities, because it empowers parents to become a part of the process, a part of the change system. So it empowers them to child development, gives them information on child development. So then they're advocates. It also trains them on advocacy skills and leadership skills. So especially our families are very vulnerable, and maybe just got home from treatment, just got their families, children back, very vulnerable. So it's those kinds of empowerment and inclusion training that we want to give the parents. Put it back, get them involved. Pretty soon they're running for community council, school board, tribal council, state representative.
Yep, absolutely. One more question.
One more question. Hi, I'm Stephanie from the Minneapolis Health Department. My question is, we have looked at childcare across the state, and we have probably a large population of children that go to friends, families, and neighbors. And my question is, we're talking about quality. You know, we have the whole parent-aware system that got put into place. What are we doing to try to reach those families to make sure that the kids that are in those homes are receiving the same quality as the childcare like that Barb and Amy have brought forth?
We provide, through CCDBG, the Child Care Development Block Grant, we are able to reach out with, to our FFN, our friends, family, neighbor care, our relatives who care for our children. So doing home visits with them. The state of Minnesota, through the Race to the Top, we're also able to get a little pot of money to help. And so providing them with health and safety items, school readiness, literacy packs, just visits, I think is a strong support, because you're right. And grandmas are usually, you know, they're kind of put off by it at first. You know, I've raised 10 kids, you know, you can't come into my house and tell me, you know, and you're absolutely right. And we want to learn from you, but at the same time, we want to support you in the school readiness. And so then we sneak in a little child development and school readiness thing. So they appreciate it.
I do also, you know, in the child care regulation, which I'm sure you're still working through the 600 pages of, we have addressed this in the child care regulations now. And in fact, we're trying to bring more of our unlicensed, you know, people that are outside the system in. Because it's very important that we get them in and we make sure that these children are learning something while they're there. So I think that's a big piece of it. The partnerships that we've done across the country, most of our partnerships involve family child care and bring some family child care providers into the Head Start sort of philosophy. And I've seen in many cases where that is really starting to work. But it's an outreach strategy that we need to get to these programs, really. Any final thoughts? Yeah, Barbara.
Well, just, you know, when you talked about going to community and where childcare is just really, you know, kind of the poor redheaded second cousin that, you know, once removed. And then you have, you know, a beautiful Head Start program. I've been to a couple in South Dakota that was exactly that. And, you know, childcare was in a modular building, an old IHS building that was 30 years old. Went in and, you know, they were doing the best they could with what they had.
Right.
You know, and then just on the other side of the fence, and it was closed off, was this beautiful Head Start building, state-of-the-art playground. So, you know, talking about bringing childcare up, it's not so much the quality all the time, it's the resources and the compensation. I'm glad to say that back home, our child care centers and our Head Start centers, you know, the staff are making the same amount of money because they're teachers, and that's how it should be.
And I think that is where we need to level the playing field on this. And one of the important parts, and I know we need to break here, of the partnerships, and I think the most amazing thing I've seen in visiting the partnership programs is that people they're getting the equipment and they're getting the supplies and the teaching materials that they need. And it's like Christmas in some of these, they've never had that. And so it's really making a difference though. So I think we need to close on that. We could keep going on this for a long time, but we really appreciate, and I appreciate each one of these people because they're doing such important work. Thank you.
This is my grandbaby too.
Is that right?
That is our.
Thanks a lot, panel. Take a 10-minute break and come back. We're going to start the next session with a video on language immersion, and then we'll hear from our panel. Okay, Brooke, we can come up. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. We have one of our stars here at the far end. You might recognize Betty Jane. It also was produced. Chris Long and Jacob Wascalis are here. We're very instrumental in helping that video. And we think we have a few other folks from Wachoi Nandagikinen.
Nandagikinen.
Say again.
Nandagikinen.
Thank you. Who are here today as well. So today, the next section is to discuss language immersion. And I had a chance to write an article for the Community Dividend publication, which is a publication of our Community Development Department here at the Minneapolis Fed, and looking at the importance of language immersion, and had a chance to talk with all three of these folks as I prepared for that article. And what we talked about coming into today is to have an open discussion. There's some topics that we're going to cover, but we'll look at each of those topics, and then we will open it up for question and answer from all of us. Brooke Aman, am I pronouncing the last name right? Okay, good. Wadu Kadading. All right.
Good job.
Ojibwe Language Institute, which includes language immersion school from preschool up to grade 6, and I believe you're going to grade
We tried 7 this year.
7. We're up to grade 7. Which has been established for over 10 years now.
16.
Yeah, 16 years. And then next we have Matthew Rama, who is with Thunder Valley CDC and the Lakota Immersion Child Care Program, which is part of a larger language revitalization effort on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And then, as you saw, Betty Jane Schaff, who is here, who is one of the founding mothers of the local program here with Dakota and Ojibwe languages. And so to start with, just to have a level set on what we understand language immersion to be, I want to just ask the panelists to define, what is language immersion? What is this form of instruction? How does this differ from other ways to learn language?
Do you want me to start this way?
Sure.
Okay. Well, at Watukadading, we have a mix of approaches for Indigenous language medium classroom instruction from the pre-K program through the 3rd grade. It is a total language immersion environment, so that means that no English is spoken unless it's an emergency situation. And all the academic content, everything is delivered through the Ojibwe language. In 4th and 5th grade, we adopt what we call an 80-20 approach. So 80% of the classroom content is delivered through the target language of Ojibwe, and they take English language arts as a class. They begin that in 4th and 5th grade. Then in 6th and 7th, we take a 60-40 approach. So we add a few more classes delivered through the English language, and some of that is also meant to have the middle school students start to work, or I guess start to develop some social skills with their English speaking peers, so they have mixed classes. So middle school is really new to us right now. We weren't intending to have a 7th grade until the 6th graders last year threatened to fail so they could stay. So we did it. So we're in it. So that's our approach. There's different, immersion decisions that communities make about how much to immerse the students in. So that's ours. It's a mixed approach.
Yeah, and Matthew?
Okay, so definition for language immersion for us is we don't try to think of the word immersion too much. Like we had this discussion earlier, even though we actually call it childcare, Lakota immersion childcare. We were like, why are we even calling it that? We didn't go to English school, you know. We didn't have an English classroom. So we have a daycare and we have a kindergarten now, and we just speak in Lakota all the time, and that's how we're talking. And that's how we approach it. We don't talk English. We've tried to create as many things around them, books and apps and videos, so that their whole world is not just it's not that they're just getting to speak Lakota or hear it from the adults. They're seeing it on the videos. They're seeing it in books. I mean, so that their culture, their life today, their present day culture is immersed in Lakota. And not just, we know that, like he was saying in the video, we know they're going to get English at home. We know as soon as they leave the daycare, none of our kids have fluent speakers as parents. I mean, their grandparents, most of their grandparents speak, but none of the kids' parents speak. So we know that as soon as they leave, they're going to speak English. So we don't need to worry about their English skills. What we need to worry about is just making sure that they have Lakota as a first language and as part of their everyday life.
Yeah, Betty Jane?
I guess for us at Wachowie, coming kind of from the child development part, we look at the children and their spirits as those little sponges. Their brain is that sponge. So we want to put all we can with the language around them, whether it's what they're seeing, what they're talking about, what they're experiencing, you know, whether it's through our foods or through our curriculum. So anything that we can do that brings the language into the classroom, that's what we think of it as, a sponge, and we want to fill that sponge with as much language as we want. Our goal is to have our children someday dreaming in the language. So we want that language to go all the way into their sleep. So that's kind of what we feel about immersion.
Thank you. Next, we're just going to give a little bit more time to talk a bit about some of the details of your program, the number of children you serve, you know, what the day is like for a little bit briefly. And we have some pictures, so if you want to bring up the slide presentation for this part, the first pictures that we will see are from Wadukadading. And Brooke, would you like to just expand a little bit more?
No.
So you can kind of see the pictures
Yeah,
here.
okay. Well, our institute, the focus overall is the language. So Ojibwe Moen is our goal is to make sure that Ojibwe continues to be spoken. So the way we approach that, one part of it is to have our school-based program and make sure that there's Indigenous language medium classroom education is available, because we've found and we've learned from our helpers that and the way that we all learned language was by being immersed in it. That's how we learned and we experimented. So the other, I guess the other ways that we help support our language are curriculum and teacher development, the language research and development, and community and Indigenous language outreach. So our school, currently we have 78 students. We have 11 in the 4-year-old program. We previously offered a 3- and 4-year-old program, but as has been kind of the theme, there's no money in early childhood, and especially in Wisconsin, there's really not a lot of options for supporting early childhood where you use a language other than English to deliver and develop the children. So some of these pictures show a little bit about how we approach our educating our students. We take them outside. We don't spend a lot of time in the classrooms. A big part of their education includes a proper Anishinaabe education, which means gathering food from our forests and from our homelands, our lakes. We take our students out on the, out ricing. We gather wild rice. This little boy here is with assistants parching rice. those are the students' hands, and they're showing tapping the trees. And then here's a helper and one of our parent volunteers polling a third grader through the rice beds gathering rice. So they, as Wagush, mentioned earlier today, we really expect our students to fully participate in the language experience overall, and it can't be done in a room somewhere. It has to be an experience. So that's a big part of our program. So we made a decision 2 years ago because we had demonstration grants through federal sources, and one of the things we knew when it's more difficult to find funding for the younger students was that one of the things we found through our experience was that students who had at least that year before kindergarten going into to start up kindergarten, they had an easier transition, they had a better experience transitioning to kindergarten. So we decided to focus on the 4-year-olds. So that's where we are currently. Our long-term goal is to solve the funding issue, the problems we have with supporting that age group, and go all the way to as young as possible, prenatal, start having children in utero hearing people speak Ojibwe. So that's kind of the plan, and that's really where we are right now. So we decided to focus on getting as many 4-year-olds ready for kindergarten within an immersion environment as we possibly could to make that work. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Betty Jane.
Our program is located in South Minneapolis in the Phillips neighborhood. Our site is actually not the same place as our office location. We have a partnership with the Family Partnership at Four Directions, and that's located in the Little Earth neighborhood. And so our site is a partnership between them. They provide the space, we kind of provide the teachers, and that's what makes our center work. We have 2 classrooms, one Dakota, one Ojibwe. We don't try to teach both languages at the same time in the same space because they're totally different. And so we currently have 11 kids in our Ojibwe room, and the reason that is kind of low is because we have so many young ones. So with the younger children, we can't have as high numbers. So we're making room for the younger kids to be in. We lost a lot of our kids last year because they graduated out and went on to kindergarten. So we have a lot of new ones in our program in the Ojibwe room this year. And we have 6 students in our Dakota room. We do have one family that is transporting their kids all the way from Welsh, Minnesota to get into our program. And we also have another family that is now working from one of the Lower Sioux Reservation, Lower or Upper Sioux. One of the families from there is actually now going to start transporting their child to come up to be in our program every day. So that's like over an hour drive for some of those families just to get their child into the program. So we have the 2 classrooms. We serve 18 months to 5 years old till they get into kindergarten. The students go for 3 hours a day in the morning. In the beginning, we did fight to have the kids all day, but if you do work in a preschool program, and depending on what ages you work with, most of the time after lunchtime they do take a nap. So there's not a lot of teaching that we can be doing while they're sleeping. So we opted to give up the nap time so that we could have them in the morning when they're able to learn the most and when they're awake. So we have the kids from 9 o'clock in the morning till, 9:30 to 12:30. They come into the immersion classrooms, and then after we're done having lunch with them, they go back down to the English-speaking classrooms, and that's where they'll take their rest time and finish out the rest of the day until the parents come and get them. So we have in the past had up to 5 classrooms. When we first started our program, we were very ambitious, and we wanted to serve as many kids as we could. We have had up to 67 kids in our program, all preschool age. We had a partnership with Minneapolis Public Schools, which we had 2 classrooms that had 20 children each. We no longer have that partnership with them anymore, so we just have our daycare sites that we're working with. So our numbers are a little bit lower now, and the kids go for 9 months, so they go as long as the school year goes. It was just too difficult, and a lot of the students are not there during the summertime, so we didn't have the consistent attendance that we wanted with the kids in that summertime, so we opted to drop that a few years back. So that's how long our program goes. If you can see in some of the pictures, they do a gardening program. You know, we try to get them out as much as we can. We do a total immersion when they're in the classroom. We do opt out of that a little bit sometimes when we do our field trips. One of the examples is we provide a STAR lab for them. So I actually coordinate the STAR lab and bring it to the classroom or across the street to the gym. The kids will come over, but then I play the language dummy, and I ask the children to teach me the words. So at that time, they become the teachers and they teach me the language. So I have to present the stuff in English because it's in the dark, so I don't have a lot of visual aids. I'm not a language speaker. I have worked through the program and with all of the speakers, but I go in and I'm the language dummy, and then I have them teach me the language. So it's an opportunity that we are still using the language. They still are getting out to see other things in the world, because we don't want to close them down just because we want them to learn the language. They still have to experience everything else in the world. So we try to just do as much language as we can when we're not in our immersion space. So that's kind of who we serve and some of the things about our program.
Thank you. And then we'll turn to Matthew.
All right. So we're located in Oglala, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Reservation. We have 27 kids, 22 kids at the daycare, 5 kids in kindergarten at the grade school, which is about 14 miles away. We have a wait list of about 100 kids. Everybody would like for their children to be there, but we wouldn't have enough money to do what we can. And so we can't serve a lot of people. We can only serve the amount of kids that we have. We don't. And the thing for our wait list is first come, first serve. You get pregnant, put your name on the wait list, and you're the first one on that wait list. That's how we've done it. We haven't had any other kind of selection process. But we do have people that come actually from as far as Rapid City, which is about 100 miles, to have their children learn the Lakota language and to be in the daycare. We open up at 7 o'clock in the morning. The first kids come and the last kids leave at 5. We're open all year long, 12 months a year. And you can see some of the things that they got going on. I didn't even know what the pictures were. So our language is written, so they do a lot of, we're starting to get them to learn the sounds and stuff, just like you would at any other early childhood situation. Want the kids to understand and really get them ready for kindergarten so that they can feel like they're successful learners when they get there. And I feel like we're very focused on making sure that, we're walking in two worlds. Everyone in our staff understands that, we have things to the traditions, but we also have to realize what's going on today and tomorrow. And so what are we doing to make sure that our kids are successful, as they move through the process so that they can become whatever they want when they get older, if it's a doctor or if it's a language speaker or, a language teacher or whatever. So that's kind of how our day looks.
Great, thank you. And then speaking about the goals of your program in terms of child development, language revitalization, how would you describe your goals? Maybe we'll start with Matthew.
Oh, okay. All right, well, this is a very, they said these questions to me, and I didn't have a lot of time to look at it because I wasn't planning on coming, someone else was. But this is something that I've really thought about a lot, because the whole reason that me and another guy started the daycare, it wasn't because that it was like where we live, it's really poor. It's third poorest county in the United States, with the other two being in South Dakota. It's very poor, and we have, you're talking about 50% dropout rate, we have 70% dropout rate on Pine Ridge. The amount of suicides that we have for teenagers, there was an epidemic last year. There were so many suicides. you're looking at your community and you're looking at your own kids and you're saying, what, there's something wrong here, you know? How we're doing things is not working, and we just keep doing the same thing. And we have Head Start, and we have a Catholic school, and we have BIA schools, and we have contract schools. We have all these different entities trying to do things that are still coming up with, like Anton was saying, the same result. Nothing's changing. We're still having all these issues, and I love my home, and I love where we live, and this is where I want to raise my kids. But it was like, we got to do something different, man. Like, you know, I had two twins coming on the way, and I was like, we got to do something different. Like, let's try it, you know, like. So my goal is, do I want my kids and the kids in the program and the parents to like revitalize the language? Yes, I mean that's definitely. I think to me that's more of something that's going to come out of it. I mean, the goal of our program is to make a change on Pioneers Reservation with how the kids and their families and how other people in the community are seeing themselves. And that, yes, we are Lakota, and this is who we are, and this is who we are going to be moving forward, and we're not going to follow these same paths that are killing us. I mean, they're killing our kids right now, and some of them in a fast death, and some of them in slow deaths. And so that's our goal, and that's how we see our program. It is language, but that's just the byproduct of, hopefully that's just going to be the byproduct of what we can see in 15 to 20 years and changes with our own kids and with my own kids that are in it and my nieces and nephews and all of our Tios Baye that's taking part in the schools.
Thank you. Betty Jane, would you like to respond to that?
I guess for our program, it would be to create future fluent speakers in Dakota and Ojibwe, create positive self-identity for the kids who are coming through the program. I remember when I first moved down to the metro area and started teaching, I was working in a childcare, and I had 33 students in my classroom. I think on the day that I was doing this lesson, I had about 27 kids in the classroom, and all of those children were Native American kids except for one. And we were doing a little lesson, it was in the fall, we were doing a little lesson on wild rice and blueberries, kind of harvest, foods we'd harvest. And so I had asked the kids, well, who's all Indian here? You know, who's all Indian? And not one of the kids in my classroom raised their hand, that they could identify who they were as a person. And at 3, you should have some sense of actually, you know, where you come from, who you are. And so that was a big thing for me. And I do see that a lot in our program now. The kids are, you know, really positive about who they are and where they come from. And, you know, I see them telling other people about the things they do in the classroom. Some of the other thing is creating quality care. While they can also get language. So we want that to happen in our language programs just as it would in any other child care program. And the other thing is creating certified fluent language speakers, you know, whether that is with a certificate, whether that is with a degree, but there's not enough teachers that are fluent enough now for the demand of the programs, and every program going up in age, you need that many more speakers to be teaching in your classroom. So not only are we teaching the children the language, we also have to focus on getting those teachers so they're qualified enough and know enough language to be able to teach in the classrooms. So we want to teach, you know, the children, we want the teachers to learn, we want the speakers to learn. So we kind of look at it as all around and, you know, teaching the whole community.
Thank you. And Brooke, how would you respond to the goals of your program?
Well, I guess the goal is make sure that we still have Ojibwe speakers in 20 years at the rate at which our indigenous languages, language in general actually is becoming, you know, there's a lot of languages in danger throughout the world, which contributes just to our, I guess our intellectual growth as a whole race of human beings, that we're losing out on that, you know, all that intellectual richness of culture and expression that comes with knowing any language. But, you know, we have the same goals, I guess, in that sense, and also this idea of let's survive, like, or let's not just survive and live, but let's live well. Let's find a way to have a good, healthy life, good, healthy relationships. And I guess I've been, listening all day, and we talk about, we have a goal, but then you see where there's other things going on. So with our early childhood immersion approach, it's really the intersection of two of the greatest, most detrimental historical traumas that our people have ever experienced. One is, and they're so connected, and that's like this linguicide, this destruction of our languages, but also separating our families. They were used as a means of taking us away from who we are. And so, our goal is the language, but we end up doing so many other things. And so the ultimate goal is that, but we ended up, that's why we kind of developed the institute model. It grew out of remaining true to our goal, but making sure we addressed all of these other things that were coming up as we, at first you think it's as simple as my child is in the prime language development year of their lives, I need to get some more languages in there. And for myself, it was, well, maybe I should move here and they can do Mandarin Chinese immersion or Spanish immersion. But then it's like, wait, why can't they do Ojibwe immersion? They should know that first. So what's happening there is then you're also having to redefine or state your values, finally state your values, and also take back power that was stripped of you as an Indigenous parent, as an Anishinaabe parent, to say, this is what I want my child to learn. They're not going to learn that their culture, their language is secondary. I want them to learn that. So the program goals and my goals, I guess I'm kind of mixing them all up. So, and the disclosure, of course, is that I'm a parent. Not only do I run this, institute that pretty much has no employees but me, so I kind of do all these things. But I'm also a parent of these students, so I'm really all in on this, just like many of our programs, I think, are, where it's really a reclamation of our true sovereignty, which is our Anishinaabe, our Ijitwawan, our ways. This is our ways, and this is who we are. And I don't want my child to go anywhere where their spirit isn't going to be fed, where they aren't going to be cared for. Our school, our entire staff are Anishinaabe. What other school in the world would they have the opportunity to go to a school where every staff member is an American Indian person? Every teacher, it's really what we just, at lunchtime we heard about who's teaching your children. Mine are their namesakes. They're their ceremonial relatives. They're their, there's blood relatives. There's relationships with those teachers that transcend this classroom experience. So not the original intent or the goal, but what necessarily comes of taking this approach to taking care of ourselves and our communities.
Thank you. So as we talked before for the article in the community dividend, but also before this session, just recognizing that there are a number of challenges to creating a language immersion program for young children. And I know that in the audience and also on our live stream, there are probably some other programs that are listening in and learning about, or communities who are considering about starting a program like this. So we have a few topics just to talk about some of the challenges of getting started. And one of those is around curriculum development, especially if there's no curriculum to begin with. And so if you could talk a bit about the process of developing that program, how you worked with first language speakers and helping to develop that program and so on. And how if we start with Brooke, if we can come to you to start with.
Well, I guess given, my previous rant here and my beginning, to show you that the curriculum is the language. So that means really having to, we have to start with ceremony, and we have to start with asking. So some of these concepts are unheard of for a lot of educators, I suppose, where we offer tobacco and we ask for help first. What should we know? What should we learn? Make offerings, and ask for that help. What should we be teaching? So one of the big parts of our school is you should learn about sacred food. So you should be out there in the rice beds. Our children should be in the rice beds. So one of the, that trauma of taking us away from ourselves that occurred for our parents and grandparents also meant we didn't have access to learning about our own food and our own food systems. So that was a big curriculum approach, I guess. But rooted in that is that you have to make the firm decision. There's a lot of big decisions that you have to stand firm on in this work. And one of them is really we're gonna do it our way approach. And that means sometimes that you're not using the curriculum that's being sold to you or that is required of you, or you're not going to learn you're going to learn the same things, but through an entirely different approach than people want to impose upon you. So even the act of taking that stand can be, that's actually the hardest part. That's the hardest part of the curriculum development is decolonizing your own mind and saying, oh my gosh, I'm not meeting the state standards. Well, if you want to do that, go to a different school, right? You can get that anywhere. You can go to a public school elsewhere. So I really think the curriculum development approach requires a real decision to figure out, use the language, have the language help guide you in how to approach learning and teaching.
Thank you. And Matthew, how'd you describe your journey in developing?
I'm going to ask if I can go first every time because I think I sound smarter if I go first. But then after she goes, I'm like, well, let me see that. I didn't know we were going to that deep level here. Yeah, because that was deep.
Let's go.
That's good. And she's right. So, I mean, the thing that she's saying is right. And I don't want to elaborate on that because there's no really way to elaborate on it. But I do want to talk about just some of the really tough parts of it. And I'm sure she can tell you, and they can tell you, just like how hard it is because you do not have a curriculum at all. There's nothing there for you. There is not books. There's nothing. So everything you have to do is from scratch. I mean, if you were to do a Spanish immersion, Mandarin immersion, there's still that material for you to use. There is nothing in Lakota. You have to create every single thing that you want to use. And it seems like I mean, I just don't think you can even imagine. I know you know, and I know you know how much time that takes. It's just like you go home and you just keep going and keep going. And we're like trying to have books, so we have like 45 books. And someone said, wow, you guys have created 45 books for your kids. That's awesome. And I'm like, that's only 45. You know, like how many books do you want your kid to read when they're in preschool? 200?
8,000.
Yeah, we only have 45. We don't hardly have anything. And so it's like this nonstop battle to try to just try to get things so that, you know, the next person that's behind you can at least have it easier and have something to follow. But you know, it's tough. It's really a tough business to be in because you really have to be dedicated and like believe in the whole system, and like, because if you don't, it's like an overwhelming situation with your time, and like I can't, it's too much, and I don't know if I can do this anymore. Because it's like she said too, and the money's always an issue. So you can't say, well, I'll hire this person and they can make the books, and I'll hire this person and they can create this curriculum, and I'll hire. It's like you got this limited amount of funding, so you're like end up going, okay, well, I'll work for this amount and do all these things right here. And hey, remember how we were like really good friends? Yeah, could you do this too right here with me, bro? You know, and you have to you have to be like that. You have to be a real good politician to get things done, because if you don't. Because it's like she's saying she has kids, I have kids that are in the program. It's like you do not want your kids to suffer or to be struggling. I mean, not just, I feel like that, I know that we do the social things, but it's like I don't want to have them struggle academically either at any point in their life, where it's because I didn't enable them with enough material to make sure that they're going to be successful. So I think that's what I have to say about curriculum. It's not as good as her answer.
But I think too that an important part for people who might be thinking about this is we obviously in our programs made a decision to create literate Ojibwe or Lakota speakers which our predecessors who were Ojibwe speakers only didn't necessarily struggle with the literacy portion as well, which adds just another challenge in there for us as well.
Very good point. Betty Jane.
Okay, I'm going to call ours a trial and error approach. Because as it was mentioned before, I am one of the founding mothers of the program, so I was there from the very beginning idea of doing it to when we started doing the hiring process. I was the one who took in the applications. I was the one who set up the hiring committees. I didn't get to make the decisions on who was hired, but I did bring the people together, you know, get the applications in, set up the meetings, have the speakers there and the people who were doing the hiring. So I did all that, and then I managed to have a position in the program myself. And I said, well, what am I? And they said, well, you're the curriculum specialist. I think they just made it up. So I became the curriculum specialist, which I said, well, what is that? And they said, I don't know, we just gave you a title. So I became the curriculum specialist, and it was my job to work with the people who were coming into the program. When we started our program, all we looked were for fluent speakers who wanted to come and work with kids. We didn't ask for anything else from them except for to want to be in that classroom and pass the language on. So when I got them being from, you know, the early childhood person and them being the language speakers, we came from them two different worlds. And so in the first couple weeks that they were going to be going into the classrooms, we had them for 1 month. We did massive trainings, went and visited as many immersion programs and language sites that we could see in 30 days, took a trip around Minnesota, and then came back. We did as many in-house trainings as we could, and Immersion 101, child development trainings, whatever we could think of, we brought them in and tried to teach them as much as we could in a month before we put them in the classroom. So the first couple weeks, I was just giving them simple activities to go and do with the kids. Anything you would do in a child care department, like finger painting or, you know, playing with Play-Doh. One of the activities was the little pigs, 3 little pigs, because everybody knows the 3 little pigs. And then the speakers would come back and I'd say, well, how'd it go today? How'd the activity go? And they're like, well, we don't have a word for pink. You know, what they might call pink here, they might call it something else here. So, but we as a program did not have a word for pink. So there went the 3 little pig stuff because they're all pink. So we couldn't do that. And then they'd bring back the finger painting. Well, why did you bring the finger painting back? Well, we have never finger painted. So there was all these things that I thought, you know, early childhood people can do this, the kids can do it, but the speakers didn't have any knowledge of what I was talking about. So for us, what we did was we had 2 hours of curriculum development every week for as long as our program was running in the first few years. 2 hours, at least 2 hours a week, we would work on curriculum development and bring the speakers together. Well, we had so many different speakers from Ojibwe and from Dakota, so we had to kind of split that up. So we had like the Dakota curriculum team, the Ojibwe curriculum team, which consisted of all of the speakers in our program and myself kind of guiding them along. So I think our curriculum came actually from the speakers. Then everybody having their different skill levels. You know, one was better at maybe music play, one was better at doing art activities, you know, so they all had their different levels. So we had to come to a, you know, we had to agree on what we were gonna do. So we looked at the medicine wheel, the 4 directions kind of thing, and we just tilted it and we made it like a seasonal one. So we had winter, spring, summer, and fall. What do we do as Native people in these times of the year? What is important for us? What do we think our children need to know in the future? And we did this for a cultural one, and then we also looked at it for early childhood. What is the state going to be looking at? What do they need to know by this age? When are they coming into our program? So we kind of took both of those and then meshed them together. And as we were working on them, the knowledge for the speakers grew, the knowledge for me grew. You know, there were certain things. She was talking about doing the ricing lessons. I made the most awesome ricing lessons. We had the ricing song. This is the way you knock the rice, knock the rice. This is the way you pull the boat. You know, we had songs, we had books, and I had some relatives go out take all the pictures for me so I could make my own booklet for it. And for about 4 years, nobody ever taught the ricing. Nobody ever did it. And I go, well, we have all this stuff here. Why is not anybody using it? The teachers didn't know what rice looked like on the lake. So not only are we teaching our kids these, you know, things that we do in traditions, we're also teaching the teachers at the same time. So you question about why are you not doing this? Well, because they don't know either. So ours was a lot of trial and error. We met. In the beginning, they'd ask me for a different color Play-Doh every week. And I'm going, okay, you guys are going to make Play-Doh because you're going to see how hard it is to make, you know, 15 pounds of Play-Doh by yourself. So I made them make Play-Doh. I made them finger paint. Anything they would come to me and say they didn't know how to do that, I would try to find a training. If I couldn't find a trainer to do it for them, I would do it. You know, a lot of it was hands-on. That's how we as Native people learn. We have to see, hear, do. We have to feel it all and have it all around us. And then we learn better. So all of the teachers were able to learn through this process of us all coming together to develop our curriculum. You know, whether it was books, songs, you know, and then we'd have trainings on how to do bookmaking or how to, you know, music play or, you know, stuff like that. So our curriculum came from the whole program and all of the speakers and people who contributed and taught in the classrooms. So it wasn't one-sided. I was just there to kind of guide them, and, you know, we wanted our kids to know self-care. You know, they teach that in preschool, you know, about taking care of your teeth. You know, what do I do when I get up in the morning? You know, so we kind of went off some of that stuff, and then we went off of our cultural stuff too, and then we kind of meshed it together. So we changed some of it. You know, they do President's Day. We did Chief's Day. So we just switched it to something that we wanted, that it fit. But it was still, you know, they're talking about presidents. Well, we'll talk about our chiefs, you know. So we just changed it like that.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to move to look at the topic around parent involvement, because it sounds like parents, you do have parents who are very interested in this program, if you have waiting lists and so on. But what are the expectations of parents who have children in the program, and how do you work with them, and also what is their language skill level at, and what type of resources do they have for language? And I'm going to start with Matthew.
All right. Sounds smart again. But for our parents, when we very first started, it was, you know, one of the most common things that I heard is, you know, we actually do in our schools teach Lakota from kindergarten to 12th grade. Most of the teachers don't have any teacher training, so it's not real. It's not done real well. So like my kids that were older that have went through school, they can say their numbers and their colors and their animals, and that's about it. And they went to 12 years of Lakota, you know. And so, you know, so my first approach was like, I'm not even gonna worry when we start. Like, I'm not even gonna worry, because the thing is, well, they can't learn it because they don't speak it at home. They can't learn the language. We're struggling because their parents don't speak it at home. Well, we can't make their parents speak it at home, and we can't make them fluent, you know. So what can we do? I said, it happens all over. I said, kids come to Red Cloud School from South Korea, and they speak English perfectly. They don't speak English at home. They don't even speak English in their community. They speak it at school, and they come and they're foreign exchange student. They speak it just fine, English, And I said, so we can't look at it from the standpoint that we have to do what we have to do here, and then we need to just have our parents be involved as a community. So I've tried to we do have, our parents have to do language class for 2 hours every week. So our parents have to attend language class for 2 hours. So all parents go to language class with the 27 kids, or one of their families does. But it's not, obviously they can't match their children's ability level because their children are way above them. So one of the parents was saying, yeah, that was really cool. As I was at home and I was saying, run, jump, run, jump, run, jump, and then that was it. And I was like, well, that's a start. But the thing is, I feel like but what we're creating is that I feel like we're creating community. We're creating community. They're engaged in their children's learning. Now, even right now, the kids that are in kindergarten, the stuff that they take home, the instructions are in Lakota and stuff, and their parents can't read it. And so they're already above their level, but they're very interested in, Facebook's all blown up with them, doing their homework at home, and they're talking in Lakota and stuff. And then we do all these different activities, and the parents, it's a community. And they like to be around each other, and when we do activity, you see them all come. And I felt like that's the kind of things that are going to make more of a positive. If our goal is really to create a systematic change on the Pioneers Reservation to improve kids' lives, that's what's going to improve their lives. Their parents being engaged. I mean, some of the historical trauma you're talking about, it's we can have parent-teacher conferences at the regular school, and there won't be any parents. Very few parents come. Do they want their kids to be good? Yes, they want their kids to get good grades. But they don't really come to parent-teacher conferences. They'll come to a basketball game. But they're not going to come to, if we have a craft night or something like that, there'd be 20 parents, 300 kids. So I thought that try to change the focus to be create community, create events where they enjoy being together. And now after 6 or 7 years, or 5, 6 years now, that I feel like we have that. And that people that come into the group, they like that. They enjoy that. They get to be part of that. And I think that's how we've attacked it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thank you. And Betty Jane, how does your program work with parents?
In the past, we provided weekly parent meetings where we would provide childcare, but it wasn't intended that we split the families up. We did want them to spend time with their kids who had a little bit more language knowledge than the parents. We see a lot of the parents having little or no language when they start their child in the program. A lot of them, we don't have any rules or regulations. We do ask them when they do put their children in that they try to commit to learn the language themselves. There are programs in the past that say, do a contract, or you have to spend so many hours in the classroom, or you have to do so many classes yourself. With the way our model is set up and the parents are paying for their child to go to the child care center, we can't really tell them you need to now do this. You're paying to have your child there. We do ask them to make that commitment though. So we were having language classes for the parents, family-friendly events. In the past, we've had a showcase challenge, which is more like a talent show for the classrooms. And we invited any other immersion or language programs in the community to participate, had some prize money, brought them together, had food and entertainment, and fed them, and then did a little talent show for the classrooms. We had one classroom that had 20 kids. One child showed up by himself and sang a 5-verse song, and he won $200 for his classroom. So, and he was so proud. His parents were so proud, and he actually was not even a native child. So they were so proud of him that he came into this all on his own, and he ended up winning first place in the talent show. So we do things like that where the parents can come and participate. We want to highlight the child's learning right in front of the community, in front of their parents. We've done a cooking contest where parents can come and participate, and then we always, whenever we do our things, I hate to say it, but we have the children perform. We don't really ask them if they want to perform, but usually they'll get up and sing a couple songs for whoever's there. We've had one do a little puppet show type of thing where they were telling a story as they were on the stage. We ask them to do classroom involvement. In the past, we've had a week-long summer camp that was open for the whole family to attend in the community where they could bring family members. So we just try to create, events that the whole family can participate in. Then they get sent home with a lot of the materials that they would get in the classroom, whether it's a book or a language CD or something like that. We'll try to get that out to the parents so they have that for their resource at home.
Great, thanks. And Brooke, parent involvement.
I would say this for us, it's still a work in progress. We really haven't. Well, one of the issues we have is, like, you know, we were saying everybody has to do 5 jobs. So our priority isn't always teaching the parents to speak Ojibwe also, when we're really just trying to be better speakers to make their children better speakers. So we probably have ignored our parents more than we should. We haven't problem solved how to come up with solutions to that. One of our recent additions to our staff, however, is he's a linguist, a PhD, Dr. McGizzy, Michael Sullivan. He was also a professor who taught the Ojibwe language in a college setting. So he's going to start 2 nights of language table. So parents and community members, parents are welcome to come to that to learn with a little more structure. But the other, especially for our 4-year-old program, we don't have transportation for them. They're not allowed to ride the bus that the older students in the K-7 program ride. So somebody has to bring them to school and pick them up every day. So even though it would be really great to have transportation for our young students, the plus side of that is that every day the teachers talk to the parents. They have an opportunity to connect. And a big part of our approach in general with our student families is regular parent contact. So we have some of our classrooms use Class Dojo. You know, it's a little app where you can get kind of immediate feedback about how your student is doing. So there's a lot of that. Some of our parents, our teachers do weekly emails about their students' progress. So we probably do more than we're able. That's why my teachers and staff are, 16-hour days is the norm, because we're trying to keep those relationships set up. But that's the other part, is outside of that school or the institute work, we have a lot of relationships existing already with our parents and their grandparents, and through our other connections, because we participate, since we're an all-native staff, we also participate in the community life. So people are on bowling leagues together, they go to ceremony together, they live next to each other. So we're really fortunate that we have that level of just the personal foundation for having a relationship with your child's educator is kind of built into having, members of the community teaching your children.
Good. Thank you. Well, at this point, we have some other prepared questions, but I believe it's time to turn to you and to take some questions from the audience. So there's a hand up over on, actually we have in the back here.
I just want to commend you all for the hard work that you do. My question is about how supportive is, I know it's going to be different from you, Betty Jane, but for Matthew and Brooke, do you get funds from your tribe at all for the work that you do? I'm just wondering, you know, I've been trying to go to immersion for years, and I just finally feel like I'm getting to a point trying all different types of things with my tribe. I'm from the Comanche Nation in southwest Oklahoma, and I've been the child care director since 2006, so I've been trying to go there for 10 years. And finally, right now, my latest effort is to bring the child care staff to become certified language teachers. And so that's my latest project that's going on right now. But I was just wondering, you know, of course, I am a CCDF director, and I also administer gaming funded over income subsidy for over income families. But where we have one of the requirements for that program is to come to a monthly language class for the family. But to go to immersion, I feel encouraged now after listening to you guys, because we've been creating curriculum for the past 2 years, and we've written a sign language book and interpreted all of our documented and undocumented hymns, and we've wrote a reference. But we've done a lot, but we haven't. We also have speakers in both of our child care centers. We have 2 child care centers. One is they're both elders, but one is really great. But I really feel encouraged listening to all the information you've given today. But I was just wondering, you know, it seems like I'm advocating now for the tribe to put some money to it, you know. I know the ANA is very competitive, you know, and there's so many people that compete for those federal dollars for that. But I was just curious about how supportive your tribe is for the efforts that you're doing.
Yes, if we could respond to the question about the support from your tribe for these programs, but if you'd also briefly mention the funding streams that you're using for your programs. And we could start with Betty Jane.
For our programs, we actually get some state funding. We don't get a lot from the tribes because we are in the metropolitan area. We have tried did individual scholarships for each tribe, but then we have to show that that family is registered in that tribal area to use that money on that certain child. And we didn't, some of them were not enrolled, and so there was a lot of problems with us getting tribal money. When we very first started the program, or when we had the initial idea, we didn't actually we started the work I think I started in 2000 when we very first started the initiative to start the immersion program. There wasn't a lot of funding out there. We didn't have a lot of support. So we actually started the Dakota Ojibwe Language Revitalization Alliance before we started the immersion program, which we kind of brought all of the people around the state. We went to each tribal, we talked to the educators and the tribal leaders and the elders at each reservation and asked them, told them what we were trying to do and would they come and be a part of it. So from all of those trips and traveling around to all the reservations, we did get an ear or two on each reservation to come and be a part of our Dakota Ojibwe Language Revitalization Alliance. And then we discussed the issues around immersion, or, we told this group, everybody knew we wanted to start an immersion school. How can we get that support? How can we start networking? And through this group, we actually went to the state of Minnesota and did some legislative work, and we acquired money first for a teacher training program at the University of Duluth and Twin Cities. The next year, the money, first it was a resolution, then we got the teacher training money. Then the next time we went back to legislation, we actually got, I think it was 2.5 million or something, then that got cut back to 1.9 million. So we have been going back every 2 years and getting this money from the cultural and language, cultural and Heritage Fund. And so there is some now money for the state of Minnesota through that fund because we went and we did that legwork first before we started our immersion program. So then we did get some federal funding from ANA to get us started. We've had foundations sponsor us in the past, so we do get some state money, some from foundations, and then we did get some federal money for a while when we did get the ANA grant. So that's kind of where some of our funding has come from.
Yeah, Matthew?
Yeah, we don't get any tribal money. The money situation is always a fight. That's the battle. When we started with we just had like a GoFundMe. I don't remember what it was called back. It was something else. I don't know. It was one of those kind of GoFundMe. We had like a campaign and we got enough money to like be open for a month, and then that's how we started. And so it's been like this constant battle to try to stay. I mean, and we've grown and gotten a lot bigger and found different funding sources through foundations. And we actually do have an ANA grant, which is about to end, and some private donors and things that we've been able to like piece together and grow and do the things that we need to do. But I mean, it's a tough. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, we tried to go the Head Start route, but they didn't want to do a class. We were trying, could we just do a classroom? You know, we were trying to do everything to be creative, to make it happen. And then they were like, we don't want to do a classroom, and okay, fine. And so we just stepped away, and you know, it's just one of those things where you pray, you know, being Native, you believe and you pray, and there was some times where it was, you know, we were calling people and saying, hey, can we get that grant early, because I need to pay these guys like this week, you know. And it's like that, and it's better now, but I mean, I think you just have to pray and believe and just say that, you know, the creators and our ancestors are going to watch over us and make this work, and that's kind of how we've had to make it survive over the past 5 years, and I don't know, that's how we'll have to. It's not the only way we're going to do it, but we are going to continue with that. So,
And Brooke?
Yeah, let's talk about the money. So we don't, like currently, our tribe, we're located on the Lakudere Reservation in, you know, northern Wisconsin. Our tribe doesn't give us any money, but what they do give us is they lend us some of their inherent sovereign rights, which includes they have a really responsive, receptive governing board, legal counsel. There's people who assist us, and one of the biggest I guess contributions they make are resources in that sense, where we have support. So anybody who wants to do this, so here's the warnings. I guess we can you know, take the top off that one also, that can of worms. So we have had the same issues in potentially doing a Head Start partnership, taking on some of those slots and doing an immersion track within Head Start. So just, you know, recently we've done this before. We started out with the preschool program as a kindergarten readiness program, which was a demonstration grant through the Department of Indian Education, I believe. And we demonstrated some awesome stuff, but then the money's done and you can't continue this great thing you started, just like the ANA sometimes happens to be for tribes as well. So I guess I would call our potential for the Head Start partnership, we have mutual resistance within that, because one of the big challenges, and we learned it through the demonstration grant, is that a lot of the federally approved assessment methods, so I think it was earlier today, the question was asked, how does policy affect what we do? And for us, we have to really go back to some of what Anton was talking about as far as what type of privilege is being exerted within this policy. So one of the problems with the United States policy is that it's all English focused. How can we get these children speaking English well enough to go to English school to be English speakers? And it can be somewhat prohibitive because you're asking me, who is trying to establish a good Ojibwe language foundation in my child's prime language development years. I'm building synapses here. You want me to take them away from some of the only time that they're going to have to be immersed in this language, to ask them about rhyming and nursery rhymes. We don't even have rhymes in Ojibwe. Our colors, you have to use the color based on whether it's an inanimate or animate. That's a really more complex language concept that we're not expecting a 3-year-old to understand. They're not. And if they respond in the English assessment in Ojibwe, the person doesn't know what they're saying, so they don't get the points. So it really looks like if we use an English-only GIPRA-approved measure for child development, that we're not developing our children at all. My child didn't know nursery rhymes, got like a 0 on one of those assessments. But he could retell the creation story, our Ojibwe creation story, which is much better than nursery rhyme by my measure. But those tests, they don't work for us. And saying, if you want the money, you have to do this test. You're saying a lot of things. One, English is better and more important and worth more. And compromise your values to take this money so you can have money for this program. And when we talked, with we're talking earlier, one of the Head Start is these class observations. So when we discussed how would that work if we took 10 slots of Head Start for our students. One of the concerns that was brought up is, well, the observers aren't going to know what's going on if it's all in Ojibwe. And for me, that was like, that doesn't sound like my problem. So if you don't know Ojibwe and you're coming to observe, then you figure that out, federal people. Figure out, work with us, how to make this work. And decolonize yourself, your oppression mindset that this is early childhood development only happens in English. It's the only way it can happen in the United States of America, except that my child goes to school at the Lukudere Ojibwe Reservation, which is a sovereign territory, where the official language is Ojibwe-Moan. So there's, even in those policies, by doing that, it's a threat to I guess it kind of dissolves the sovereignty initially by saying you have to test your 3-year-old in a language that they're not taught in. Show gains in this English assessment when that's not really the goal here. Recognize our sovereignty and let us, and don't just say either, you can come up with your own assessment, but we're not going to help you or support you in any way to do that. We're not going to lend researchers to you or give you money to hire researchers so you can figure out the best way to do that for yourselves. You can come up with it, and that's kind of what the stance is now with a lot of the education policies, is that, you could do whatever, do your sovereignty thing, and come up with some assessment, but we're not going to give you any assistance with that. You're on your own. So that is not helpful either. So one of the ways a tribe, if they don't have the funding, the money resource, can do is they can assert themselves politically. Your chairman, a letter from the chairman to any one of these places where they can affect the education policy, can ask to make sure that all the federal policies align with the Native American Languages Act. Make sure that the education policies align with that. That was an act that gave us this ability, the means by which we can, be exempt from some of those assessments. And then on top of that, give us the assistance, the money, everything we need, the researchers to help us design the research that will benefit our work in the field.
Thank you.
I went off really topic, but.
So we're getting close to reception here. So is there a final question from the audience? And reception will be a wonderful time, of course, to have some individual conversation with the panelists over some very good food. And here comes the microphone.
Hold on one second.
I want to congratulate you and to applaud you for the very good work that you're doing. I appreciate your priority and value for culture. My question is, when you are seeking funding and you identify that your culture is important, can you just talk a little bit about how funders have responded to that? And I did hear your comment. But I was just wondering, are you seeking national support? Are universities getting more involved? Are there national funders or even local funders that are supporting your work? Thank you.
Yeah. Any response? So
We do have funders. So I'm just looking at you because I did this last year, but really calling out on, foundations and making sure that they're aware of what we talked about at lunchtime, that what is our approach? Are we really helping people? Or are we just kind of pushing money there and hoping it helps? Are we giving full support? Are we really looking at sustainability long term? It's what are we asking people to prove? How are we asking that question of, are we telling you by the numbers or the data, the results? Are we telling you what we want you to say to us, or are we asking you to be involved in a process of how can we long-term kind of sustain this positive program, this approach, this growth? How can we sustain that? So really making sure we have people who are part of those discussions. I always kind of bring that up, that I really some foundations and even granting agencies, they really require us to relive our historical trauma, in a sense, and saying, this is why we need this more than you, which that's not our way. I want him to win and her to win and you to win. We all need to move up together. I shouldn't be telling the why I'm the worst off story. It should also be, this is why I'm the best and I deserve $20 million for my endowment for my early childhood work, So I'm always, and the places that I've really connected and been able to connect with, because really that's personally traumatizing as well, because I'm from that. My mother was abused, so she would speak English, and now I have to tell you again about why, and I don't want pity money either, because we're awesome, like we should get money for that, not for being pitiful. So I've found good places that have been really supportive. For us, we had started with W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the Buffett that was mentioned earlier for Nebraska. We've had, started to make relationships, because that's the other part that's difficult also, is that with trying to cultivate foundations funding, we have to make relationships. But I haven't been to the city for years. Like, I don't have the money to travel to go where the people, where foundation people are, to just make those personal connections. I can write a letter, but that's not the same as, we don't really have the resources to, I don't get to go to conferences and connect with people, because I can't spend the money on that when I should be spending it on the book making party at school, so I think that's a difficulty with some of those sources of funding. And I don't know if you guys.
I agree with that.
find
I do.
that.
We have some good partners and some foundations that help us Better Way and Lannon and Doodle Associates. We have different partners that help us, that believe what we're doing, and then we present it, and this is the way we're doing it, and they feel like that we're doing it in a positive way and help us. But it is hard. It is hard because the amount that they give you is still limited. Whereas, like, when you see, like, it is hard when you're, like, on the res and you're, like, you do see that Head Start building, like, right there, and you're, like, you're in this trailer that's, double wide trailer.
Infested
Yeah,
trailer.
you're, like, going teaching, and here's these kids over here that, like, have been there for all these, my kids went to Head Start, I'm not saying that it's a bad program, but you're just so frustrated when you see all that money with all the things that they can do, and it's still producing, like, last year we still had the most suicides ever, you know what I mean? And it hasn't changed anything. It's not changing. And you're like over here trying to say, I think we can make a change this way. And I know it's made a change in Hawaii. I know it's made a change in Maori. I know it's made a change in different parts of America. That that as Native people, that we got to reclaim our language and our culture. This has got to happen. And I'm not the only person saying this. It's like every single community saying it. There's not one person in here that's Native that says, I don't want my kids to learn the language. I don't. They're all saying, I want my kids to learn the language. I want my kid to be successful, but I want my kid to learn the language. I want my kid to be involved in their culture. That's every single Native person. But we're still following the same pattern, but we can't. It's hard, it's tough, and it gets frustrating because you just have to drive by that, like you said, that beautiful playground every day. You gotta drive by, oh, we did this, and we took a bus, and you saw the Head Start bus trips all heading out to the circus, to Rapid. Are we going to the circus? No, but well, we will go outside today, though, and there are some animals out there I saw last night. So that, you hope, and I see that, the people are starting to get more involved in policy, and I wish I had more time to, like, be more involved in that, because I know that that's really where you can make that change, because I do understand that, it's this double-edged sword with federal funding, but it's like if we're really going to be sustainable, some of that money has to come through at some point. If it's going to be like, it sure would make things a lot different on how you're able to succeed, and
I think it's
sustain.
exhausting to ask for the money year after year also. So one of the, my other, I guess, two foundations of the world or whatever appeal is, we need the long term, especially when you're talking about early childhood. The best gains we probably won't see for 10 or 20 years. So I want a 10-year grant, a 20-year, a 50, let's talk about the length of some of those types of support. That we need time and assistance to show our success.
But I do want to say to any of you that are still, that like you're thinking about doing it, is do it.
Yeah, you don't have
Do it,
time.
man. It's worth it.
If
It's
you have
worth
speakers, don't waste another day.
Yeah, they're losing them every day.
Then go ahead.
Yeah, you're losing them every day, and there's nothing better than the first time when the kid says something to you spontaneously, in the language. There's nothing better. It will make you have chills. It will make your community feel different about them and about that situation. So if you're thinking about it and you're waiting for something, don't wait. Just go.
And a
it'll work.
beautiful Comanche child speaking your language, you'll convert hundreds of people.
Yeah.
They're more effective at getting people on our side than anything we can say here.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to conclude our panel discussion. So join me in thanking Brooke and Matthew and Betty Jane. And also thanks to the panelists for bringing up some tough issues. Tomorrow we will have a chance in our strategy circles session to be able to have some conversation about funding, about different types of programs, how to partner across different types of programs. We'll have also a table on language immersion. So our next step is to go to the lobby, and we'll have some food, refreshments. We'll have a short program at 6 o'clock, but this is a wonderful time for you to get to know each other, and I look forward to seeing you out there. Thank you very much.